Hello and welcome back, everyone. Our next speaker has a mission, which is to facilitate collaboration with regional teams and local networks that translate social progress index data into policy-oriented actions across the world. He leads the global expansion to scale the adoption of the Social Progress Index to equip government, business, and civic leaders with actionable insights on the things that matter most to their community, prioritizing G20 and other strategically significant countries.
Here to discuss the impact of Covet challenges to global performance outcomes, please welcome, all the way from Ecuador, the Global Network Director of Social Progress Imperative, Mr. Franklin Murillo. Murillo, we have to pause as we cannot hear your audio from here.
And the reason why is because I was muted. Sorry. Now you can hear me, right? So what I was saying is good morning to most of you, good evening to some of you, but at least good night from my side, because today is almost 11 p.m. But it's a pleasure to be with you today. And it's a great honor for us to actually spend a couple of minutes with you speaking about this interesting topic, especially because I think that you will have a very unusual presentation today with me, because we will be covering about social aspects, environmental aspects, and how they're actually they are connected with the innovation. That there are a lot of things that will place us on the same page. So as we were saying, as I was kindly introduced, my name is Franklin, but please call me Frank. I am a Costa Rican who is based in Quito, Ecuador, and I work for an US-based organization that is called the Social Progress Imperative. And we're based in Washington, D.C., and we have presence in more than 45 different countries. Today, what I have planned for my presentation is that I have divided this presentation in three main sections on a way. The first one, I will introduce our work with the Social Progress Index, and also I would like to explain you what we're measuring and why we're measuring that. The second part of the presentation is going to focus trying to explain what are going to be like the impact that we're going to experience with all the different crises that are having because of COVID, and also what was the state of the world before that. So we will understand why, on a way, we, as private sector, as the innovators of the world, we need to come together as one to tackle all the challenges to change the global outcomes. And lastly, I will tell you on a way why innovation, doing business, and competitiveness are subjects that are very linked to social progress, and why we, as business leaders on a way, we need to focus on these kind of aspects. So this is the plan for today. I hope that you will like that. And now we're ready to start. So with the first slide, I will always love to start with this slide because we are all coming at least from the business area. And we have learned a lot from that guy who is part of this slide. His name is Michael Porter. And we know him because of all his theories regarding strategy, competitiveness, and all the things that I think that we have learned by heart on our business schools. And something very interesting is actually that Professor Porter is actually one of the minds that are behind the work of the Social Progress Index. He's actually one of the creators of our index. And the reason why he decided to work with us is because he realized something that is shown on the slide here, that it says that economic growth alone is not sufficient to advance societies. And this is something that this is like the first main takeaway that we would like you to take from this presentation. If we are in the innovation area, if we're working with businesses, there is no such a thing as a successful business on a failed society. And this is something that we have seen across geographies all over the world. And this is something that I want to plant on your mind today. We need to understand that the situation that we're facing now, and even a little bit before COVID, is challenging, but also is a great opportunity for us to actually build better societies and actually to do better business. because something that we have seen is that economic growth and social progress is a two-way relationship. And we're going to go a little bit deeper into this relationship into the next slides. But please go to the next slide. Before I explain you what the social progress index is, something that I think that is very important for us, especially we're benchmarking and we're working about definitions, just to come up or to present you our definition of what social progress is. Social progress is, because in order to measure something, we need to have a definition for that. And what do you see on our slide is our definition of social progress. And I think that in a way, something that I have been able to see all over the world is that this is a definition with our lives and with the things that we value. But I want you to focus on the words that are bolded. And in there, we're highlighting three main dimensions or principles that I'm going to be covering all over my presentation. The first one is basic human needs. The second aspect is going to be foundations of well-being, that is actually linked to the quality of our lives. And the third dimension that I'm going to be highlighting as well is going to be the opportunity. That is actually the way in which we can actually reach our full potentials. Those three main concepts, foundations of well-being, basic human needs, and opportunity, are going to be present all over our presentation, and as it is shown in our next slide. What you're going to see in our next slide is actually our framework, and these are actually all the different outcomes that we're measuring globally. We are measuring social and environmental outcomes on our index, and this is very important because the relationships that we're going to explore today are going to be focused on that. We launched our first social progress index 6 years ago, and we have been capturing data for more than 163 different countries. And I'm going to be presenting the outcomes of this based on this data. What you see in this slide is actually our index. And you can see like the three dimensions that I was referring to on the previous slide: basic human needs, foundations of well-being, and opportunities. And underneath each dimension, you will find 4 components. You will find issues as nutrition and basic medical care. You will find health and wellness, personal freedom and choice, inclusiveness, and all these elements or components are our index. And we have been measuring the world, trying to understand where we are. And the reason why we started with the index is because at the beginning, we all compete to get a nice score, right? And the reason why we created the SP is because we wanted to have business leaders, governments, and policymakers all around the world to compete on these kind of indicators to shape a better world. So, of course, now you're thinking, yes, this is an index. I would love to see the ranking. So if we go to the next slide, what I'm going to show you first is going to be a map. And we can go to the next slide. Thank you. I'm going to show you a map with the results. And as you can see, like the tier 1 are going to be like the countries that are more on the Nordic side of the world. And in a way, this is not a surprise for us. In the next slides, I will be showing you like the ranking, and I'm pretty sure that you would like to see the position of your country there. Maybe something that I would like to flag here, if you can take a look maybe at tier 1 and tier 2. And I have the opportunity to see some of the presentations from my colleagues, and you will be hearing all over this conference about best practices, good cases, case studies, but you will see that a lot of the countries that are going to be mentioned there and they're going to be highlighted, they belong to tier 1 or tier 2 of our index. And the reason why is because we do see a very strong correlation, a relationship between social progress and innovation. And this is something very important to understand. They are not isolated aspects. And this is like the whole objective of this presentation, to highlight this. If we go into the next slide, I think that you will be able to see what you are looking for. And please, exactly. And is the position of the Philippines. Philippines is actually on tier 4, and it's actually the last one at the bottom for tier 4, at least on this side of the screen. You are on the position number 9 with a score of 66.62, if I'm not mistaken, and if I'm not blind now. And I want you to keep that, because to keep that number in your minds, because based on this work and the data that we have been capturing for the last 9 years is that we have been able to really keep track of all the progress that we have done as humanity for the last 9 years. And these are the options that I'm going to show you based on more than 9 years of research. And this is going to be captured on the next slide that I'm about to present. Because when we speak about the world, something that I want to acknowledge and I want to highlight is that we can say that we used to live in a better world. And the data that I'm showing here was before COVID. And actually, there is not enough data regarding COVID that will help us to capture the impact here. But I will give you like a simulation in a couple of slides. But it's very that the world in the last 9 years has been improving. But something even more important to highlight is that this progress is slow and is uneven. And we create like an average score of the world. And if you see, Philippines is a little bit better than the average of the world on this progress. But the progress that we have seen in the last 9 years is a progress of only 3.3 points on progress. And you will see that it's not enough on a way. And the reason why I'm flagging this, and maybe we can go into the next slide, is that we need to acknowledge that even before COVID, we were facing a very dramatic and challenging situation that affects not only our lives, but affects our businesses, our supply chain, and everything that is linked to our business. And as you can see here in the bars, is that yes, we see a lot of progress, especially on the basic human needs dimension. But if we go into the opportunity one, we see a lot of gaps, especially on two important components for all of us: inclusiveness and environmental quality. And in the next slide, we can see the comparison also over the time. And as you can see, just on the top, human basic needs, we do have some improvements, very important improvements, especially on access to information and communications, to advanced education, to shelter, to water and sanitation. But if we go and see the opportunity dimension, and especially the environmental quality component on foundations of well-being, we see a decline. And we have experiencing a decline of personal rights, inclusiveness, personal safety, and environmental quality. And this is important to highlight because before COVID, we were dealing with this. And now we're all focused on the test, on the mask, and that we're not able to travel anymore. But before this, we were already facing a very challenging world. And the outcomes of that world were not good. And we were facing a lot of political issues all over the world. We were facing the fires in Australia. We were facing a lot of climate disaster, and we're facing that again, at least also in Latin American area. So the thing that I want to stress here is that the world was not perfect before COVID, and certainly is not going to be on a better shape after COVID. And now we're going to analyze a little bit better, because this was the number before COVID, but then we can continue. Maybe we can skip like the next three on a way. COVID came, right? And we can see like on the next slide how on few months we experienced from one single case into more and millions of cases. And we can skip like the next three slides, because it's actually like a very nice way to show how we got into this situation and how COVID has spread. And I think that we have seen these graphs a lot in the news. But the bottom line about this, it is captured on the next slide. All the gains that we did, all the gains that we achieved because of our work in the last decades are at risk because of the situation. Why? Because, next slide, something that we can see, and I think that we can all agree, is that we're facing a systematic or a systemic crisis. This is not longer, and I think that I want you to understand this, and I think that we will realize this. This is no longer a health crisis. This is no longer a social crisis. This is no longer an economic crisis. This is a systemic crisis that is affecting our lives and our industries at different levels. Of course, it affecting our access to health or to health. It's also affecting our capacity to learn. It is affecting, of course, our economic, our flows. It is affecting our employees. It is affecting the way that we move and interactions. Everything on a way could be shown on the next slide that I'm about to share. All the impacts that we're having here and all the things that we're suffering because of this situation could be captured in one of these circles. We have affectations of economy. We have social implications as well, of course, regarding health, including mental health and interactions. And suddenly, we have realized that we live in different worlds. And this is very, very challenging. And this is something that I want to highlight and to stress that this is affecting us in all different levels. On the business side, our employees have been affected. Our supply chain, we're now working with a lot of people that are very concerned about the supply chains and the risks that they are presenting, our logistics. So this isolated aspect that maybe is not coming from the economy itself, this is not a financial crisis, it's not started like this, it came from the health, has affected our economy. And this is something that we're going to understand a little bit more regarding the impact that is about to come. So maybe we can go into the next slide. So now the question is like, how COVID, on a way, has affected us. And something that I'm going to do, and we can go into the next slide, please, is that as a way to show you like the impact of the affectations, I'm going to use the of the SDGs. I'm not sure if you are aware of the SDGs, but they are called the Sustainable Development Goals. If you're not aware of this, I think that we need to work more on that aspect, because all business leaders, they need to be they do not only need to understand this, but they need to be committed to this. That SDGs are like the global goals that we have ourselves committed to achieve. And the idea was to achieve those goals by the year 2030. We can continue into the next slide. Something that we have seen is that our tool is very good to capture the SDGs. And you can see our framework with the SDGs. But some of the research that we have done in the last months and weeks and days is that, and we can go into the next slide, COVID has affected all the 17 goals. This has affected all the single aspects of what we can measure on social progress, or we can measure as well, or we can reference as sustainable development. And this, of course, has a lot of implications on when and how we're going to achieve the goals that we set. Because I want to make something clear. These goals were not created to take us to heaven to 2030. They were created to prevent us from hell. And this is something that on a way, and we can go into the next slide, we have realized that impact, that COVID is going to have a huge impact on us. We were thinking and we were projecting that with the data that we had at the beginning of the year, we were supposed to achieve the SDGs, not by 2030, as we thought. We were thinking that we were supposed to achieve the goals by the year 2082. So more than 5 decades later. But now with COVID, at least we believe that we will delay that another decade. So we're thinking about reaching the goals on the year 2092. And this, regardless if you are a believer or not, is going to have deep consequences. Not only on the way that you're doing business, but also something that we have seen on our work, because we work with business all over the world, is that also the mind of the consumer, the mind of your client is changing, because they want to focus more on these kind of aspects. Why? Because we can continue to the next one, please. This delay has a lot of affectations in all the areas that we're thinking, and I forgot to highlight the institutions here as well. Democracy is at risk in some places, and this is another consequence that is going to have also deep implications on our work. So we can continue maybe into the next one, please. And we're going to, and I want to highlight this. Why this is affecting our business? We already spoke about logistics, supply chain, but also the mind of our consumers. We conducted like a global survey with Ipsos, and something that we realized is that, and this was done in July and August, is that people have realized that in order to build a new world, the World Economic Forum is speaking about, in order to come out of this great reset, we need to prioritize well-being, social progress, sustainable development, even over GDP or economic stuff. And this is something that you will see more linked into the businesses that you're running. People would like to understand what is your impact, how you're translating all your growth and all the numbers and all the money that you're getting on the way into benefits, into the communities that you're serving, and into the employees that are part of your system. And if you're not going to be able to promote this, and you're not going to be able to do this, you will fail. You will fail. And this is something that I think that is important to highlight. This is no longer a very nice thing to have on our reports. This is a fundamental issue of our businesses and needs to be included in our core strategies. This is a value proposition, a competitive advantage, and we have been seeing this. Can we continue into the next slide? And this is very important. Why? Because I'm sorry. I'm always the optimistic person in the room, and trust me, I am that person. But what is coming is even deeper, and it could be even more challenging than COVID-19. The recession, of course, is a big thing, but the biggest thing that is about to come, and that we need to take some ownership as well as business leader, is climate change. Climate change is going to change everything if we do not tackle this now. And if we do not start, if we avoid taking immediate actions to tackle this and to assume our role as private sector. And we all, I think that you know this by heart already, or you have that thing, that on the way. And if you do not know, your clients already know that. We did a survey. We work also with Deloitte. You know who Deloitte is, and they realized that the whole behavior of the clients are changing, and they're looking towards these kind of issues at the time that they're doing their purchases. Now, I'm going to head into the final part of the presentation. So please go next. If this is not good enough for you, I would like to close the next slide just to tell you with data and with some correlationships why this is a good business for all of us. Social progress is linked, has a very strong relationship with competitiveness. So doing or focusing on social progress and sustainability is going to increase our competitiveness, and it could play the other way around. The next slide. We also have seen that focusing on sustainable development is also very good for doing business. Again, if we destroy the climate, if we destroy our society, there is no way that we're going to do good business. So again, keep this quote again in your minds. There is no such a thing as a successful company on a failed society. And this data is showing this. Now we go into the next one, please. And this is a good example. Again, as a way to wrap up, we're facing one of the biggest. This is actually the crisis of our generation, because it's touching this aspect. And maybe your question is like, and what am I gonna do? This goes beyond my capacities. This goes beyond everything that I can do. And you are right. But my advice to you is actually, I have two suggestions that I would like to share with you. The first one is in the next slide, is that the first step that we need as innovators, because this is an innovation forum, is to focus and to understand that one, this is a systemic crisis, but needs our involvement and we need to take ownership about this. We need to have a role to fill. We need to have a role to play, and we can do that. We have employees, we have supply chain, we have suppliers, we have logistics, we have a lot of people around us, and a lot of influence that we can touch on a way by focusing the things that really matters to people. The second aspect that is here is that we need to know how to learn how to play with others. These challenges cannot be tackled by the government itself or by civil society. We need to work more on PPPs, public and private partnerships, in order to deliver products, in order to deliver solutions. Because actually, sustainability could be like a very good business if you focus on this. And this is the most important thing. Try others to tackle these challenges, because if not, we're not going to be able to do business, or we're going to lose our competitive advantage. Lastly, and when you say maybe you're a dreamer or something like that, The next slide shows that maybe, yes, I'm a dreamer, but we have some evidence. We have been working with big companies all over the world, with Coke, with Natura. Now we're working with a Body Shop, with Cargill, with companies all over the world that they have realized that they need to focus on this, that they need to prioritize this to be really innovative, but also to really make even more business and to be successful on that. If you have questions, if you have ideas, if you don't know how to do, there are a lot of cases and examples that we can be able to provide you. But this is the core of the presentation. We have something to do. We can do this together, and we need to do it, because if not, it could be too late. We need to change these global outcomes. And the only ones who are going to be able to do that is actually you have the power, you have the knowledge, and you have the networks. And that's it. That's it. Thank you very much for your time. It has been a pleasure to be with you. And that's it from my side. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Franklin, for that informative speech. Now, once again, we're opening the floor for a short Q&A. Please submit your questions to Slido using the code 45616.
So we have now our first question. How do you leverage the importance between global performance versus realization of overwhelming global poverty that all of us have been experiencing?
I think that, how can I say? I think that the first thing that we need to acknowledge is that we have a role to play on this, and I think that this is the most important outcomes. To understand that we do have a role, and of course, we can be overwhelmed with the data. I work with that data all the day, but also we can actually start doing small actions to tackle this. The way that we set up our procurement processes, the way that we engage with our supply chains could create a huge difference, and we're seeing this. So these small actions could actually be a good way to start. But the second one is just to work on this PPPs approach, public and private partnership, trying to work with governments and trying to share the expertise that we already have. Something that we have seen, and maybe just to add on this, is that companies that are good with exports have been like the one who has been more resilient and have been the one who has been forced to innovate more because of the situation. And in some places in Latin America, for example, these big companies now are modeling this to small SMEs so they can follow right protocols, so they can remain competitive in their industry. So good examples, but I think that the most important thing is to assume ownership and to be willing and committed to do something to tackle those numbers.
Okay, wonderful. One last question, please. How do we calibrate and still be at par with the global performance outcome amidst the impact of the COVID pandemic?
The thing that we need to, in order to calibrate that and to have like the right answer, we need to have the data. And so far the data is not available. We have cases on the way, but we do not have the necessary data to calibrate that and to have those kind of outcomes on the way that we would like to. So we will have to wait a little bit on that. We're thinking about modeling, and we have been doing some modeling, especially at the subnational level, but we do not have that. The only thing that we know so far is that these are going to be the areas that are going to be touched, and something on the way that, and it is based on the forecast, is like trying to measure or trying to capture the impact that it's going to have on GDP. Because GDP is also a nice way to say how you can translate economic growth into social progress. So far, this is the best that we can get. But as soon as we have something more, I will let you know. I will be more than happy to share those results with you.